Human beings have always refused to accept the limits of landscape. Where mountains blocked the way, we carved through them. Where rivers divided worlds, we leapt across them. And where seas seemed too wide, too rough, or too dangerous, we built anyway. Across the planet, giant bridges stand as evidence of that refusal. They are not just routes from one place to another. They are declarations of ambition. Structures imagined in places where logic once said no. Over deep water, across violent winds, above canyons, between cliffs and through terrain that seems designed to keep people apart, these projects turned distance into connection. What makes them extraordinary is not only their size, but the environments they had to overcome. Saltwater, earthquakes, storms, unstable geology, brutal heights, impossible spans. Every one of these places forced engineers to negotiate with nature at its most unforgiving. This journey is about those negotiations, about the bridges that look too large to be real, too exposed to survive, or too beautiful to belong to the practical world. Some are suspended over oceans. Some vanish into clouds. Some stretch so far that the land disappears completely. All of them reveal the same thing: that when human imagination meets difficulty, it sometimes produces structures that feel less like infrastructure and more like myth made visible. Some bridges become symbols so powerful that they stop belonging only to the place where they stand. The Golden Gate Bridge is one of them. Spanning the narrow strait between San Francisco and Marin County, it is more than a transportation link. It is one of the most recognizable structures ever built. What strikes you first is the color. Most major steel bridges fade into gray, silver, or industrial monotony. The Golden Gate does the opposite. Its international orange cuts through fog, light, and distance with a kind of theatrical confidence. In bright weather, it burns against the blue of the bay. In heavy mist, it seems to hover, half visible, like something emerging from another world. The color was not chosen only for beauty. It helps ships see the bridge in fog and protects the steel against the corrosive effects of sea air. But function alone does not explain its impact. The result is unforgettable. Stand beneath it at Fort Point, and the scale becomes physical. Steel towers rise overhead. Cables sweep outward in immense curves. The bridge feels both elegant and severe, as if it were drawn to match the drama of the strait itself. It was built in one of the most difficult settings imaginable: open water, strong tides, persistent fog, and a region defined by seismic instability. That it was completed at all during the Great Depression is part of what gives it its legend. Then there is Lake Pontchartrain Causeway, and the emotional experience could not be more different. If the Golden Gate is iconic, expressive, and cinematic, the causeway is minimal, repetitive, and strangely hypnotic. Stretching nearly 24 miles across Louisiana's Lake Pontchartrain, it is the world's longest continuous bridge over water. Driving across it feels like entering a place with almost no visual variation at all. The road runs straight ahead. Concrete supports repeat endlessly. Water extends in every direction. Somewhere around the midpoint, the sense of land begins to vanish. If the weather is flat and the water is calm, the horizon blurs until driving here feels less like crossing a lake than gliding through an abstract space with no edges. It is not a romantic bridge, and that is part of its appeal. Its beauty comes from monotony, from scale, from the unsettling sensation of being suspended in the middle of water for far longer than your instincts think is reasonable. The causeway does not impress through ornament or symbolism. It impresses by erasing everything except distance. Seen from the air, Jiaozhou Bay Bridge looks almost impossible in its repetition. A long, pale line of concrete extending across seawater with such persistence that it begins to resemble a geometric mark drawn onto the bay. Connecting Qingdao across Jiaozhou Bay, it is one of the great sea-crossing bridges of the modern era. Its main route stretches for roughly 26 kilometers, and with connecting sections included, the full network reaches well beyond 40 kilometers. For several years, it held the Guinness World Record as the world's longest bridge over water. But what makes it impressive is not only the number. It is the image of scale translated into engineering rhythm. Span after span, support after support, thousands of pillars driven into the seabed to hold a roadway steady across open marine conditions. On the bridge itself, the experience is different from what the aerial suggests. The 6-lane roadway feels fast, controlled, and continuous. Ships move below. The bay opens on both sides. And beneath the apparent simplicity of the drive is an extraordinary hidden complexity. The foundation system, the exposure to sea weather, the logistics of building at this scale over water. Jiaozhou Bay Bridge is what happens when engineering stops trying to look dramatic and simply becomes overwhelming through sheer length. The 1915 Sanaikeli Bridge creates the opposite impression. It is not repetition that defines it, but singular scale. Crossing the Dardanelles in Turkey, the bridge announces itself through height, symbolism, and national meaning. This is not merely a transport link between two shores. It is a statement. Its main span is the longest of any suspension bridge in the world. That figure, 2,023 meters, was chosen deliberately to commemorate the centennial of the Republic of Turkey in 2023. So even its dimensions carry political memory. The bridge does not hide its symbolism. Its red and white detailing echoes the Turkish flag, giving it a visual identity far more expressive than the neutral steel tones seen on many long-span bridges elsewhere. Driving beneath the towers and cables, the bridge feels ceremonial. The lines rise cleanly into the sky. The span opens dramatically above the water, and the structure becomes more than infrastructure. It becomes an object of national pride made visible in steel, cable, and proportion. If Jiaozhou Bay Bridge impresses by extending outward, Sanaikeli does so by lifting upward, turning a crossing into a monument. Akashi Kaikyo Bridge is one of those structures that seems to simplify impossibility into a clean, elegant line. Spanning the Akashi Strait in Japan, It was once the holder of the world's longest central span for a suspension bridge, and even now it remains one of the defining masterpieces of long-span engineering. The bridge stretches nearly 4 kilometers in total, anchored by towers rising 282.8 meters above the sea. From a distance, the form looks almost delicate, an impossibly thin roadway suspended between sky and water. But the elegance hides immense strength. This is a bridge designed for one of the most challenging natural environments on Earth, a region shaped by strong currents, typhoons, and major earthquakes. Driving across it creates a strange sensation of detachment from ordinary land-based travel. The water expands on both sides, the towers stand at a scale that dwarfs the vehicles below, and the central section feels less like a road than a controlled passage through open air. It is not difficult to understand why the bridge has become a symbol of Japan's technical discipline. It is beautiful, but never fragile. Every line is precise, because it must be. Wujiang Canyon Bridge offers a very different kind of fear. Here the challenge is not open sea, but depth. Suspended high above the Wujiang Gorge in China, the bridge crosses a landscape of steep karst cliffs and dramatic river incision. The drop to the water below is around 625 meters, the kind of height more often associated with skyscrapers than roadways. From the bridge, the river looks reduced to a narrow thread winding through the canyon floor. The surrounding rock walls rise abruptly, creating a scene that feels both magnificent and slightly unreal. Unlike a sea bridge, where scale is measured by openness, canyon bridges confront you with vertical emptiness. The human mind registers the height immediately. Wujiang is impressive not just because it spans a gorge, but because it does so in terrain that seems almost designed to resist construction. It is a reminder that engineering challenges do not always come from water or weather. Sometimes they come from raw topography, from the simple fact that one side of a landscape may lie far above another, with nothing but air in between. Not every extraordinary bridge is built for traffic. Some are built for sensation. Peak Walk by Tissot in Switzerland is one of them. Hanging at nearly 3,000 meters above sea level, it connects two mountain viewpoints in the Alps and transforms a short crossing into an encounter with altitude itself. The bridge is only 107 meters long, but length is not what matters here. What matters is exposure. Snow, wind, glacier, rock, and open void surround the walkway on every side. Cross it, and you are not just moving from one peak to another. You are stepping into a high alpine panorama where dozens of major summits reveal themselves in clear weather, many of them rising above 4,000 meters. Everything about the place sharpens perception. The air is thinner, colder, cleaner. The light is harsher. The glaciers below feel permanent and ancient, while the bridge itself feels improbably slight against the scale of the mountains. It is not a triumph over nature in the heavy industrial sense. It is something subtler, a way of allowing people to enter an environment that still remains unquestionably larger than them. Beipanjiang Bridge in China returns to the language of monumental infrastructure. Spanning a deep valley at a height of roughly 565 meters, It is one of the highest bridges in the world. Approaching it by road, the structure seems almost too delicate for its setting. A line suspended between vast canyon walls, hovering where a bridge seems to have no business existing. Yet once on it, the impression changes. The height is extraordinary, the winds can be severe, the drop is immense. But the crossing feels controlled, stable, and exact. That contrast is part of what makes the bridge so impressive. It exists in a setting defined by exposure, yet it delivers calm. Beipanjiang is a perfect example of modern Chinese infrastructure at its most confident. Bold in placement, immense in scale, and engineered to turn topographic extremes into functional connection. It does not simply cross a gap, it makes the gap feel conquered. When Humber Bridge opened in 1981, it became the world's longest single-span suspension bridge. That record has since been surpassed, but the bridge still carries an unusual distinction. It remains one of the great long-span suspension bridges that ordinary people can cross on foot or by bicycle without paying. That alone gives it a different character. It is monumental, but not distant. Crossing the Humber, the bridge rises with a kind of quiet confidence. Its concrete towers stand 155 meters high, and the cables sweep outward in long curves above the broad estuary below. The setting is not as dramatic as a canyon or alpine crossing, but that is part of its identity. The bridge does not rely on spectacle. It relies on proportion. Its beauty comes from openness, restraint, and the way it stretches across the landscape without seeming to fight it. Millau Viaduct in France feels almost weightless by comparison. Crossing the Tarn Valley, it does not look like a conventional bridge at all. It looks like a line of road suspended in the sky, supported by pylons so tall and slender that the structure seems closer to a sketch than a piece of infrastructure. On foggy mornings, the effect becomes surreal. The valley disappears into cloud, leaving only the deck and the vertical pylons visible above a blank white field. At its highest point, the structure reaches 343 meters, making it taller than the Eiffel Tower. Yet what people remember most is not the number. It is the sensation of driving above weather. The cables rise like strings. The deck seems to float. The valley vanishes. And for a few moments, the experience stops feeling like road travel at all. It becomes something stranger, a controlled passage through air and mist, where the bridge itself seems almost detached from the earth it connects. When Sidu River Bridge opened in China in 2009, it became the tallest bridge in the world. The number alone is astonishing, nearly 500 meters above the river below. But numbers do not prepare you for what that height feels like in person. The bridge spans the deep terrain of Hubei province, where cliffs rise sharply and the landscape seems built from vertical force. Its main span reaches 900 meters, suspended between canyon walls so steep that the crossing can feel less like a bridge and more like a line hung through the sky. For drivers, the experience is a mixture of exhilaration and disbelief. The road is stable, but the surrounding emptiness is so large that your body keeps trying to remind you where you are. This is one of those places where scale begins to distort intuition. The canyon below looks distant enough to be abstract. The slopes on either side rise so abruptly that they seem almost theatrical. Sidu is not only a bridge of record-breaking height, it is a bridge that turns topography into vertigo. Royal Gorge Bridge in Colorado works on a smaller scale, but it feels more intimate, and for some people, more unsettling. Hanging 291 meters above the Arkansas River, it crosses a granite gorge so dramatic that the river below looks almost decorative from the deck. What makes Royal Gorge memorable is the material experience of it. Unlike massive highway bridges, this one has a wooden deck, and that changes everything. When people walk across it, the boards respond. In wind, the structure speaks. There is a creak, a vibration, a subtle reminder that the bridge is alive beneath your feet. That sound can be unnerving, but it is also what makes the crossing real. Stand in the middle and look down, and the scale of the gorge becomes immediate. A train moving below appears reduced to a thin line. The cliffs rise around it. The gap feels vast. Royal Gorge does not overwhelm through engineering mass. It does so by making the human body fully aware of exposure. Some bridges create awe through height. Others do it by surrounding you with water for so long that land begins to feel theoretical. The 7-Mile Bridge in the Florida Keys is one of those crossings. Despite the name, it runs just under 6.8 miles, linking small fragments of land across clear tropical water where the horizon seems to dissolve into color. Driving it feels almost airborne. The bridge rises gently in the middle to allow marine traffic to pass, and that slight lift enhances the illusion that you are no longer fully on land or sea, but somewhere between the two. On one side is the Gulf of Mexico. On the other, the Atlantic. Both are brilliant, open, and unmistakably maritime. Chesapeake Bay Bridge offers a different emotional register. It is not tropical and serene. It is exposed, steep, and psychologically intense. At its highest points, drivers are elevated well above the water, and the long approaches can feel almost like climbing toward a roller coaster peak. On windy days, the openness becomes part of the drama. The bridge does not hide the elements. You feel them. Its railings can seem alarmingly low to nervous drivers, and that visual exposure matters. Even when the structure is entirely secure, the human mind reacts to height, wind, and open water in predictable ways. Chesapeake is one of those bridges that people do not merely cross. They remember crossing it. Confederation Bridge in Canada is longer in a quieter way. Stretching 12.9 kilometers across the Northumberland Strait, it connects Prince Edward Island to the mainland and stands as one of the country's most important infrastructure projects. Unlike the sharper drama of Chesapeake, Confederation Bridge unfolds with patience. Its long, sweeping form feels deliberate, measured, almost meditative. That patience is part of its symbolism. The bridge took 4 years to construct and was designed not just as an engineering solution, but as a national statement of endurance and commitment. It is proof that sometimes the most powerful infrastructure does not shout. It persists. Öresund Bridge is one of the rare crossings that feels like infrastructure designed with narrative in mind. Linking Malmö in Sweden to Copenhagen in Denmark, it begins as a bridge, reaches an artificial island called Peberholm, and then disappears into a tunnel for the remainder of the journey. It is not just a crossing. It is a transition between systems, countries, and forms of engineering. The bridge section stretches nearly 8 kilometers from the Swedish side, carrying both road and rail across the strait. What makes Öresund remarkable is not merely its size, but its hybrid character. It solves geography with elegance, turning an international connection into a seamless sequence of bridge, island, and tunnel. Hangzhou Bay Bridge in China is another expression of marine scale. Extending roughly 36 kilometers across the bay in Zhejiang province, it uses an S-shaped alignment that helps distribute forces and respond to local conditions. The shape also gives it visual identity. It does not march straight across the water. It flows. In the middle sits a service area where drivers can stop, refuel, eat, and look out over the sea. A reminder of just how long the crossing really is. Mackinac Bridge in Michigan introduces a different kind of sensation. Known as the Mighty Mac, it spans the straits between Michigan's upper and lower peninsulas and is famous not only for its size, but for one specific design feature: the open steel mesh on the inner lanes. Drive over that section and you can see directly down through the roadway toward the water below. That transparency changes the crossing completely. It turns an ordinary drive into a bodily experience of exposure, especially in bad weather or high wind. Mackinac is a bridge that understands how structure can shape emotion. Then there is Langkawi Sky Bridge in Malaysia, which replaces automotive scale with human scale and turns a walkway into spectacle. Suspended from a single pylon and curving gracefully through the air, the bridge offers one of the most dramatic pedestrian experiences in Southeast Asia. At 125 meters long, it is not especially vast compared with the other bridges in this journey, but it does not need to be. The curve, the height, the glass floor sections, and the 360-degree views create an experience of floating rather than walking. Langkawi Sky Bridge is not about conquest of distance. It is about choreographing awe. At around 3,000 meters above sea level, Titlis Cliff Walk in Switzerland transforms alpine exposure into a direct physical experience. Often described as the highest suspension bridge in Europe, it hangs high above snow, rock, and cloud, offering a crossing that feels less like tourism and more like stepping into the atmosphere itself. On clear days, The reward is pure mountain drama. On cloudy days, it becomes stranger. Vapor drifts beneath the deck, and the world seems to fall away. Zhangjiajie Glass Bridge in China takes fear in another direction. Suspended high above a canyon and built with a transparent floor, it confronts visitors with the one thing many bridges allow them to forget: the emptiness below. The bridge is 430 meters long and about 6 meters wide, hanging roughly 300 meters above the canyon floor. The structure is engineered for safety, but the body does not care. The moment people look down through the glass, instinct takes over. Legs weaken, hearts race. Rational knowledge loses ground to visual shock. Russky Bridge in Russia returns the journey to monumental civic scale. With towers rising to around 324 meters, comparable to the Eiffel Tower, it stands as one of the great cable-stayed bridges of the modern era. Crossing the eastern Bosphorus near Vladivostok, it carries the drama of marine wind, open water, and extreme structural height. Driving across it feels less like commuting than participating in a project of national ambition written in steel and cable. And then the journey shifts from bridges to railways, from suspended crossings to steel lines cut through mountains, forests, cliffs, and passes. The Darjeeling Himalayan Railway in India climbs through mist and colonial-era hill country. Pikes Peak Cog Railway in the United States rises toward alpine altitude. Jungfrau Railway tunnels into the Swiss high mountains. The route from Kandy to Ella in Sri Lanka passes through tea country with a dreamlike softness. Sweden's Inland Railway moves through northern solitude. The Pacific Surfliner and Coast Starlight trace the American coastline and western interior. Gornergrat Railway climbs toward Matterhorn country. Thailand's Death Railway carries the weight of wartime history. Cinque Terre Railway threads the Ligurian coast. The Royal Scotsman turns rail travel into ceremony. Germany's Hart's narrow gauge passes through forests and mountain weather, and the Eastern and Oriental Express moves through Southeast Asia with a different kind of grandeur. Each of these railways tells the same deeper story as the bridges before them. Human beings looked at difficult terrain, mountains, coasts, valleys, cliffs, weather, altitude, and refused to treat it as a final barrier. Some answers came in concrete and cable. Others came in steel track and locomotives. But all of them reveal the same instinct: to connect, to cross, to continue. Because in the end, that is what these mega projects really are. Not just feats of engineering, and not just impressive landmarks. They are physical evidence of a human habit older than modern technology itself, the habit of standing before something immense and deciding to go through it anyway.